Today we're in Report Builder. I'm on a fairly straightforward report where we have an income statement down the left-hand side. Across the top, we have prior year actuals, current year actuals. We're taking the dollar difference and we're taking the percent difference. Now, there's a couple pointers in here that I'd like to resolve during this discussion. Number one is, for some of our clients, they like to see their actuals as positive. But in Martus, with the report builder, the standard is income always shows as a positive and expenses as a negative, unless there's an offset account. But just in general, we show income as positive, expenses as negative. So how do we set expenses as a positive? We'll walk through that in just a little bit. The second thing I see here is, so we have the difference, a dollar difference, and in essence, if it's a negative, that's a bad variance. If it's positive, that's a good variance. So income increases, that's a good variance, is positive. Income goes down year over year, that's a negative, that's a bad variance. Same concept with the expenses. Expenses decrease year over year, that's a good variance, it's positive. Expenses increase year over year, that's a negative or a bad variance. Where we run into an issue is with this percent difference. And this isn't always the case with percent. There are percents that work perfectly, but let me show you in this case, in case you run into this. So this formula, the percent difference, is taking the dollar difference divided by the original amount from the prior year. It's just difference divided by the origin, in essence. Well, when it's in the income, it works great. So if the difference is positive, the variance is positive. If the difference is negative, then the variance is negative. But when it comes down to the expenses, we have a good variance for personnel, but the percent difference shows a bad variance. The percent is right, the sign is wrong. And that's true throughout these variances. Now, how do we, I'm going to resolve this second question first, and then I'll look at putting the expenses as positives. So what we're going to do, there's a couple of ways we can resolve this. And I'm going to start off just by creating another column, even though I could do it in this column. I just want to show you that the numbers are good. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to change this separator. Whenever you add a column right or left, the default is it creates a separator. So I'm going to come up, I'm going to go to formula, and let's just recreate the existing formula to show you that our numbers are good. So we're going to say percent. Oh, not an ampersand. Percent difference. And we're going to take this and we're going to take the difference. Now I could do the operator and slash, or I could just type that in directly. All right, now it's important we do this number format as a percent. I don't want to forget that. So the difference divided by the original amount, the prior year. So when we're in the column formula, we're typically picking from the column. And I'm going to come here and pick that prior year. It says a percent. It's a formula. We have a header, which is required for formula, and update and refresh. So right now, I'm going to get the same exact results. I just wanted to show you that that formula is good. Now, method one to fix this would be, well, let's talk about what the issue is first. The reason why these are coming in negative is because our actuals are negative. And so this is taking a positive divided by a negative and coming out with a negative percent. And this is taking a negative difference divided by a negative amount, and a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So we can resolve this in a couple of ways, but an easy way to resolve this would be just, since that is the issue, and I'm going to just say this, it's not an issue up here on the income because you take this negative or bad variance, the difference dollar-wise, You divide it by a positive amount. So negative divided by a negative, by a positive is a negative, and that's what we want. All right, so let's go ahead and fix this. So one easy fix for this would be just take the absolute value of that original per year amount. So I'm going to insert operator, go to absolute value, and that put the brackets in. I'm going to remove that second bracket. Now I'm adding some spacing, but spacing is optional, just for clarity. And take the absolute value and hit update and refresh. So now if the dollar difference, and here, let me drag these so you can put it next to it, drag and drop. If the dollar difference is a good variance, it's positive, then so is the percent. If it's negative or bad, so is the percent. So this worked out extremely well. And just by putting the absolute value around the second half of that equation, or the actual year date, prior year actuals. So let me just, since I'm not saying it well, since we did absolute value against the second part of that equation, that resolved this. So we could put an if then else and say, if it's negative, sure, it's positive, but we don't want him to do that. There's no need. Let's keep it simple. All right, so now I'm going to take this original formula. Remember, I moved them around, and I'm just going to remove it. We don't need it. And I'm going to hit save on my report, because you should save as you go along. This is not autosave. But then again, if you make some mistakes, you can just cancel out and be back where you started. All right, now that resolves our first question. And I'm just going to reiterate that sometimes when you have a percentage, this is not an issue. It just depends on the calculation and what, you know, a lot of times I've seen when it's a remaining percent, it works great. So it just depends on the situation. All right, now let's talk about the second one. The second one is not necessarily a problem. Well, it is for some of y'all, but some people like to see their expenses as negative. Some people like to see them as positives. Our default is we're in the report builder, we're showing expenses as negative numbers. So how do we resolve that? So we're going to add a column right. And I'm going to add a formula here also. Now I'm going to make the header this, since this is a formula, it doesn't know what the header should be. Anytime you have a formula, a header is required, or else you can't update the column. So we're going to call this, because we don't know what you're doing a formula on. So I'm just going to put in actual dollars. Now we also don't know the time period. Now to get it on the second column, I just simply are going to hit enter, and I'm going to say year to date -23. Now I'm going to come down here and let's create a formula. So the idea here is, if it's an expense, we want all of our dollars to be positive, income and expense. So what I'm going to do, and once again, I could do an if then else statement here. If it's negative, make it positive, or I'm sorry, if it's negative, multiply it by -1. But once again, let's just keep this simple. And I'm just going to create a formula. So we're on a column, so we're using the column dropdown, not the row dropdown, even though there are times, we won't get into this on this discussion, but there are times to use a row dropdown when you're doing a column formula. All right. Take this column, and we're just going to take the 2023, and we can just do an absolute value on that. Absolutely, we can. So we're going to do an absolute value. And I'm going to add some spacing purely for clarity. Now I remove that ending bracket, so I'm going to append it at the end and hit update and refresh. And just like that, our expenses are positive. Now keep in mind, when you create a form like this, I mean, it's doing to every single row, top to bottom. Now I'm going to do the same thing. We're going to add another column right. We're going to do the same thing for year date 2022, our starting point, the prior year in this case. And we're going to create a formula. Again, this is a very simple formula to resolve this. And we're going to put actual dollars return. And the formula doesn't know the time period. So we need to put that in year to date -22. And we're going to do the same concept here. So this time I'm going to put the operator in first, absolute value. And I'm going to add some spacing. And I'm going to go ahead and say year-to-date 2022, get the absolute value. And I'm going to do update and refresh. So now we have our revenue is positive. We have our expenses is positive. Let's go and save this report and remove from the edit mode. But we've got a problem because now we have our new amounts are correct, but we still have our old ones. We can't get rid of the old ones because the new ones are dependent on the old one. The calculation uses the original columns. So how do we resolve that? Well, let's put it in edit mode, simple solution, edit the original, and hide it. So you can hide any column or any row in the report builder. And I'm going to say update and refresh. And then let's do that with the original prior year column also. We're going to hide it, update and refresh. It's still there. Let me go ahead and hit save. And remove the edit mode. When they're hidden, you still see them when it's in edit mode. But we're going to remove that. And now we have a very different looking report in that our revenue and our expenses are positive. And when there is a good variance, both the dollar difference and the percent difference are positive. When there's a bad variance, both the dollar difference and the percent difference are negative. So there's a lot of unique situations. If you have questions for your particular report, please open a Martus support ticket and send us a screen print, ask us a question, and we will help you out. So I appreciate your time today. Thank you.